Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am so excited today to talk to somebody that I've known for quite some time, and I'm privileged to call her a friend. Nikkie Achartz is the CEO of Snap Savvy Strategies. She is a well-known business growth strategist, speaker, and trainer who has extensive experience in behavioral profiling, sales psychology, trauma-informed business practices as well. She is a pricing and profitability consultant who has supported business owners in finding the gaps, fixing the leaks, and filling their sales pipeline for over 16 years. Welcome to the show today, Nikkie.
Thanks for having me. I know this conversation's long overdue.
Indeed. Awesome. Well, let's dive in. Let's start at the beginning. Born and raised in San Diego, North County, San Diego specifically, which is rare. We have a lot of transplants here. I'm a transplant, although originally from California as well. Talk to me about early choices in education. You went to SDSU, San Diego State University. Why did you choose that school and that program?
I had always been fascinated with psychology once I hit teenage years. Earlier, I wanted to be president and an astronaut and an environmental lawyer and all these things. But by the time I got to high school, I wanted to go into psychology. And SDSU has a top-rated program for getting straight in from bachelor's into a doctoral program, so not having to go through master's. So I picked SDSU and got in over there and was really lucky to find some amazing professors that kind of took me under their wing. I had, two primary ones that were really amazing, powerful women in their fields. I just chose to take a different direction and not go for the doctorate because the two programs that I wanted to look at was curriculum development for sexuality education. And that would have been on the East Coast. And my husband was still finishing school here in California and would have had to start over. So we opted not to do that. And the rest is kind of history as to leaving there. But I was not short attention span, just a very diverse attention span. So I ended up having 5 areas of emphasis. So it took me a little longer to graduate because I kept becoming fascinated with human behavior, especially female psychology and sociology. So it was fun. I loved SDSU.
That's awesome. And what was your next step? Did you have any internships when you were doing your undergrad? And if not, what was that first job out of school?
I had moved to Europe when I was 18 to do a year of service there. And my best friend was sexually assaulted on the streets, on a crowded street in Italy when we were traveling. And it created a passion for me in trauma support. So I came home and immediately, all the way through undergrad, was volunteering as a sexual assault victims advocate. And I was an acute responder. I was on pager. I know, like anybody knows what a pager is anymore, but I was on pager from 5 p.m. at night to like 9 a.m. the next morning. So if a victim came in between those hours, I would be the one that would go out and support her through her process. So I was volunteering all the way through that. And then when I graduated, they took me from acute response to long-term case management. And so that's where I was Women's Resource Center up in Oceanside. I went to a long-term case manager for in the social services space. And so I was there for a bit.
Wow. That must have been an incredibly intense and rewarding part of your career.
It was very intense. I actually didn't take well to the long-term casework. It was not a fit for me. There was too much bureaucracy and protecting egos and things like that. I was so much happier in the acute space where I could do the most amount of help. And so I did make the transition shortly thereafter when I realized this just wasn't a fit. I transferred into social services with teens who were not going to be reunified with their families. They were going to time out in the system. And I worked with them on getting them ready to be adults at 18 years old. And that is actually where my husband and I met our oldest daughter. So I became an entrepreneur because we wanted to adopt this 14-year-old, and they would not allow us to if I was still working at the facility, because obviously, I had 186 kids that I was working with, and they would have been like, how come she went home and I didn't? So I ended up as an entrepreneur simply to be able to adopt our oldest daughter.
That's amazing, Nikki. And let's move into your career path from there. You got into photography. Was that something that was a passion of yours that you fell into? Talk to me about that.
Well, as Gen Xers, we hear a lot. We heard a lot from our boomer parents, that go get an education, get a job, stay at that job, and be there, for forever until you retire. In 10th grade, I had taken a photography class, and I had really always loved it. And I got into photography because after, 6 years, it was actually almost a decade of working in the trauma space, acute trauma with the immediate sexual assault response team, victims advocate, and then working with the teens was really cumulative trauma. They had sustained trauma, daily for a majority of their lives. I needed something pretty. Like it was really difficult I needed self-care, and I got into bellies and babies because I would watch the Ann Geddes images and think, that's a baby that's wanted. That's not a baby that's, born addicted or anything like that. So I had gotten into it really from a self-care perspective, but really was not serious about it. And then one Christmas in 2006, my husband, I opened up Christmas presents, and it was an entire camera, lenses, flash gear, everything, and a note from my husband that said, I've got your back, go get your dreams. And so I quit and went and started a photography business.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you did a variety of photography, both personal branding and, mothers expecting mothers and corporate and weddings and all kinds of things for quite some time. Give us some of the highlights of your career in photography, and then let's get into the shift.
How I bridged.
Yeah.
How I bridged. Well, that's an interesting story. So I was doing bellies and babies, and then an up and coming digital marketer who is phenomenal in her space contacted my business partner and I at the time, Stephanie Blue, who is still in the photography space and is absolutely amazing at it, and said, I need you to do headshots. And Stephanie and I were like, those are mug shots. Like, they're terrible. We're artists. What is that? And she's like, no, you don't understand. Marketing's going to take this major shift, and those mug shots are not going, we're going to go into this thing called social media. And at the time, the only social media that was really predominant out there was MySpace. So this tells you how early it was. And she's like, no, I need like commercial grade images, but for like small businesses that can't afford to hire a commercial photographer, because most of them don't even get out of bed for less than $10,000. And so I was like, well, okay, fine. And literally, it was a Hail Mary market. It was, okay, fine. We might be able to use it to leverage into bellies and babies and family portraiture and things like that. And so we did it. And with very little effort on our side. Within about 6 to 9 months, it swallowed 80% of the company. We just grew exponentially fast in the personal branding space. So we needed growth capital. And I went to my dad, because your first line of funding is always friends, family, and fools. And I went to my dad and I said, hey, we really need to expand. We need a studio. We need to do some things. Or can you invest in the company with me? And he said, you have to go out and do homework. Go tell me what makes a successful photographer and what makes an unsuccessful photographer. So I spent about 2 weeks doing market research, and I came back to him and he said, okay, what did you learn? And I said, Dad, there's some really talented photographers out there. I mean, absolutely phenomenal, that are broke. And I said, and there are average photographers that I don't think are all that are making money hand over fist. And he said, yeah. So what was the difference? And I said, business knowledge. And he said, exactly. So I'll make you a deal. I'll invest in the photography company, but for every photography training you take, you have to take 2 business trainings. So it got to a point where I actually wouldn't photograph a business owner, female founder, unless I was confident that they had a solid business model, that this investment was going to do something for them versus flushing it kind of down the toilet. And when I joined Hera Hub, which was, gosh, I think I'm coming up on 8 or 9 years as a Hera Hub member. Yeah, like I think it's been that long. You and Sylvia Moth sat across from me and said, yeah, we don't think this branding photography is going to be defensible in 5 years. We heard you do things differently. What is it that you're doing? And I explained something, and you looked at me and said, oh, you're a pricing and profitability consultant. And I was like, I'm a what? And I think you pushed me for about a year, and I kept not being able to see how my base market was going to stretch to this new consulting space. And finally, which you have always done amazing for me, gently put your foot in my tush and shoved me through the door. And I went in and you wrote my guru status, or my guru profile. And I started in on that, and it was pretty slow for a bit, but it gradually gained momentum. And when COVID hit, I had always wondered where my back trauma training was ever going to come into my business world. And COVID hit, and everybody went into trauma response, and the business world had no idea what to do with it. And all of a sudden I was getting calls and speaking and consulting all over the place about trauma-informed business and sales practices. And from there it took off and went supersonic. So it's the photography business has since been let go. And I'm having so much fun. I loved photography. It was absolutely amazing. I got to work with really phenomenal female founders that probably didn't see themselves very clearly. I saw a lot of low self-esteem, a lot of perfection paralysis, imposter syndrome, and just noticing these things. I feel like the pictures were one thing and definitely helped with self-esteem and presence. But in the end, the consulting that I could do for them and the coaching on how to be business owners and how to grow their way, a way that fits us, not a masculine template, but a template that works better for us, has really been fulfilling.
Awesome. And you are phenomenal at it. I know so many people that you've supported and helping them understand that they need to run their business like a business.
Like a business.
It's tricky. So let's get into it. What do you primarily do for your clients, Nikkie?
So that's become a little bit more complicated because it's become more complicated simply because I'm serving more than one population now. So I was predominantly focused because I love to teach, love to teach. If I could teach 24/7, I would. So I was really focused on the babies, the ones in startups, the solos, on just how to set prices, how to know what their value is, how to structure a sales process that is feminine in nature, does not feel sleazy or slimy or predatory is actually more the word I would look for. in the past year and a half, I've had a great excitement and blessing to be able to start to work with emerging female founders. These are ones that can't quite punch through that million a year mark. And I have really found, I kind of had this assumption that the problems that they have would be really, and they are similar, but it's a difference. It's interesting because it's all around mindset. So solos and babies, they go macro on financials. Like they just look at gross revenue versus gross expenses. And we really did focus in that space, and then really micro on operations because they're solo. So they're doing everything in the business. When they hit the emerging phase, pretty much everything they've done to get that far, they have to flip around. They have to go micro on financials and macro on operations. And that's very challenging for them to make that shift, because what's helped them survive as long as they have in the business world, when a vast majority of businesses fail in the first 5 years, was this way that they were doing things. And for me to step in and go, but for you to get to the next level, we have to reject everything you've been doing and flip it around. And that has been really exciting to watch emergings work with scaling their businesses and what it means to bring on a team. But really what it has to do with is aligning the growth strategies to what the female founder personality profile looks like, and the targets of who they're going for and what those personality profiles look like. And most of the time we're hearing that just the accountability, the education is what they need. But it is a pricing. Most people come to me with a pricing question. And then I have to say, okay, we'll get to that, but we have to answer 7 other questions first. So we have to answer, how much do you need to make, and who are you selling to? Are you fishing for swordfish in a catfish pond? What's their business model, their sales process, their purchasing funnel? How are they structuring their offerings? But I would say, Felina, that the thing that seems to come up pretty consistently is resource allocation. Every one of them don't know where to strategically place their resources, and I classify resources as time, money, and talent. And oftentimes they're investing in the wrong spaces that for where they are and for getting the traction and the ROI they need before they move on to something else. And that's because we live in a society where everybody gets shit on. You should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And in the end, it really matters more on not what other people are doing, but where they are in their own life cycle. So it's really fun. I have such a diverse group. I'm never bored. I'm never bored.
I bet. That's awesome. Do you have maybe a case study, if you will, or an example that you could briefly share? Just somebody that you worked with, and you don't have to name names, obviously, but someone you worked with that was just particularly interesting in regards to their, where they were in their business and where you took them.
Yeah. One of the more recent ones, she runs a communications company out of Washington, D.C. What I will say is that we're noticing across board, every emerging female founder we're working with is overcompensating their teams to the detriment of their own income. So she brought me in because numbers weren't right side up, and the systems weren't optimized, and she was on the edge of burnout, which is frequently why somebody ends up with me is the female founders on the edge of burnout. And some have crossed that ledge. Some are already burnt out. But for her, it was really interesting. She had hired a team member, but had overcompensated her like crazy. So she was upside down. After she had made the shift, she was about -4 figures per month in her cash flow. So I developed a program called the Savvy CEO Surrogate C-Suite. And I've actually put together a team of surrogate fractionals that represent an entire C-suite. And so I plugged her into our COO, our CFO, our CIO, and within 90 days, we had flipped her right side up and she was 5 figures in the positive in cash flow every month. So it was pretty impressive. That was a fast turn. That was a really, really fast pivot. And it's really neat to see that stress come off her face, that whew, okay, I'm okay. Kind of scenario. So she's a real neat one, and we've got our fingers crossed that if the economy behaves itself, we should break that $1 million mark for her this coming year. Awesome. So we're excited. Awesome. As far as a new solo, we just have one phenomenal professional organizer with a formerly trained interior designer who chronologically is a solo baby, but behaviorally is behaving as an emerging. So she's a really neat one to work with. Really fast moving, already has a financial person, and we meet with her financial person once a month, and we're tracking numbers and profitability. And she's already hired, which is phenomenal. And is already finishing up a program with our fractional COO, and developing operations so that she can step back and someone else can manage it for her. And she got so busy at one point that we couldn't even hold the system, couldn't hold our meetings because she was doing such an insane amount of work, which is just absolutely awesome. It's a high quality problem to have. So those are just a couple of recent ones, like literally in the last, 3 months.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. And Nikki, what are some of the things that you're working on that you're excited about? Maybe, new offerings in the upcoming year?
Yes, we are. So the Surrogate C-Suite program is just launching. It's launched in the last 90 days. We have been testing it with only 2 of the fractionals, and we actually have 7. So we've been testing it with the first 2, which is our CFO and our COO, and working in conjunction with me, I'm the fractional CEO, and we're really excited. I have a dream that at some point, female founders, the problem with fractionals is there's a bridge as business owners grow, where they've grown beyond being able to do it themselves, but they haven't reached the point where they need to be paying, $6,000+ a year to have not full-time, but have a contracted fractional. And then you have to amplify that by all the different fractionals they need. That's beyond where they're at. So this fractional, the surrogate C-suite that we're doing, is they're coming in for laser 90-day windows where they get them over the hump, and then they're there and have an established relationship. But what we're building is that all these fractionals talk to each other. We actually have a monthly meeting with the fractionals where we mastermind, and the fractionals all talk to each other. They work well together. So the handoffs are very smooth and easy. And so my eventual dream would be that a female founder could actually sit down with all the fractionals at one time and do business growth and triage where all the fractionals talk to each other. So that you don't get that doctor scenario I experienced with my father, where I had the cardiologist putting him on blood pressure, lowering medication, and I had his Parkinson's doctor trying to raise his blood pressure. And because they weren't talking to each other, they were at counter odds, and we couldn't get a clear answer as to what was really the best path forward for him. And I've heard that there. We're also looking at launching a master course, hybrid course for the solos and babies, because we're realizing that they should be going through in a cohort so that they can hold each other accountable and have those discussions. And then we're contemplating launching a community for the emergings that they all will have. We want to match them up in masterminds where they're all marketing to the same population at the same time, so that they naturally build their strategic alliances the way I have with the fractional CEO. So lots of movement. Lots of motion. I'm very ambitious. I had my marketing team go, this is a little too ambitious. I knew offering a quarter is a little too ambitious. I'm like, no, I could do it. And then I was like, okay, maybe it needs to be once every other quarter we launch a new thing. So yeah, we're excited. We're excited. Lots of movement.
Awesome. That's great. And Nikki, if folks want to learn more, reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best hub is Snap Savvy. That's with 2 B's, not one. I know they both look wrong. It's strategies, plural. So snapsavvystrategies.com. That website has the links to the socials. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, it can connect you right over to that. But that's like the best place to go. And I'm a big proponent of interjecting a top of the funnel, as Felina's term, stop the shop, using a needs assessment so no one ever writes a proposal for free ever again. And there's actually, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be going live with a downloadable that they can go on that website and download a workbook for developing their own needs assessment. So they should jump over there and visit that.
Fantastic. I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nikki, for your time. I even learned some new things in our conversation today.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was possible. We've been friends so long.
There you go. There you go. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.